Hello and welcome to another episode of the CollabTalk podcast, where we discuss the convergence of technology, business productivity, and collaboration culture. And my guest today is Jodie Zerega. Hello, Jodie.
Hi, Christian. Thanks for having me.
Founder of Zerega Consulting with over 20 years of experience placing attorneys in law firms, corporations, and nonprofits. And this is a great topic because it's one that I've experienced in the real world and talk with product companies in this space, as well as having been a hiring manager so many times and going and utilizing various tools and technologies to try and improve on the process of hiring and using tools. My opinion is that it's kind of broken right now, but I'd love to get your opinion on this. We're talking today, of course, how AI is transforming the recruitment landscape. So, Jodie, I always, with that, the briefest of brief introductions there, always love to give you, my guests, an opportunity to introduce yourself more fully and tell us about yourself and your company.
Sure. Thank you so much, Christian, for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you about this very important topic. So, yes, I am a legal recruiter. I have been doing legal recruiting total for a little over 30 years. I was in-house at a law firm in Atlanta. I was their in-house recruiter, took the law firm from 185 lawyers to 525 by the time I left. And in the process of going through that massive amount of growth, I had to rely on some outside legal recruiters to help me with that. So during that process, I learned the hard way, and what makes a good legal recruiter. So I thought, you know what, I can do this. So in 2003, I decided to give it a shot, and I've never looked back. So yes, my clients are law firms and companies who are looking to hire a lawyer or a legal staff person to help them with maybe their existing client base. Maybe they're going after clients that need a particular expertise like that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Again, my meager experience working with a law firm back when I was 19 to 21 years old, but that experience and staying friends with a lot of attorneys, it actually fed into when I got into the IT space, went into tech immediately. My first job outside of the law firm was with a small tech company, but uh, dealing with information management governance process, IT governance, and then corporate governance came
Mhm.
from, the fundamentals of one of my jobs as a runner for this law firm in Sacramento was managing the long-term storage, both on-site and off-site, and having
Mhm.
to destroy records at the 5, 7, 10 year mark, whatever they told me to go and do, get it permanently destroyed. And I remember having the lead partner tell me the importance of this job, of making sure that, of reducing risk and, that side of things. Anyway, just it had a strong impression on me that lasted through my entire career. But it's
Right, right.
yeah. Well, this is again, interesting space. There's a lot happening here. And I say that like this space, I feel like the space is broken,
Mhm.
from uh, a recruitee experience, somebody who is looking for a role. So I'm sure it's the same in the legal space as it is in every other industry. Is that it really feels like it's broken. It feels like if you don't know somebody that refers you in, that you're just throwing something against a wall to see if will anybody even respond. Are they just scanning through digital resumes, never even looking at the facts? They're looking for specific, keywords. So there's all these services out there. Like I look at it as kind of hacks, like resume hacks of how you
Mhm.
can build a resume to beat the AI tools that are now being leveraged to automate a lot of that process. Is that a realistic perspective of how a lot of companies are doing it these days?
Yes, you are 100% correct. And it's actually refreshing to hear you say that because as a recruiter, it's very frustrating for me as a recruiter to work with, and I don't mean this necessarily as a negative, it's just the nature of the job process these days, the job search process these days. So, a company has these AI techniques or different products that they've bought to, I don't even know how they do it, to be honest with you. I don't know exactly what specifically instruments that they use to do this, but yes, they get these resumes and they're filtered out depending on whatever keywords that they put in, depending on the job that they're looking for. And for instance, let's say Christian, you apply for a job and it looks like a great job. You have all the experience for it. But let's say, for instance, especially in the legal world, they say, they want the person to have a GPA of a 3.2 GPA. Well,
Mhm.
or top 10% of your class. You must have graduated in the top 10% or have a 3.2 GPA. Well, y- what if you were the top 11%? You are completely shut out of that process, and it's a shame because there's so much more to a person than a piece of paper, and the piece of paper is not going to be able to dictate the personality of the person or the culture of the company. Is this person's personality going to fit in with the culture? There's just so many intangibles that go into hiring that I feel like AI is truly, it's a wonderful thing in terms of time saver, but in terms of being broken and breaking that process, you're exactly right. And it's a little bit it's a little bit frustrating if you can tell from
Well,
my
that
perspective.
because I think that's again what I said. Like, if you one of the things that I had done in the past, I always recommend is that if you are looking at you're interested in a specific role or a company, like first thing you should do before you submit anything automated through tools is to go into your LinkedIn network. Do you have anybody that's a first degree, second
Mhm,
degree, connection? Can you get an introduction to somebody so that it's seen as a referral versus going through the outside tools? Because most companies like don't even respond back. Like you never hear anything. It just, it sits there. It's nice when they
mhm,
have a workflow that's automated that eventually tells you you were rejected or not considered. You get the friendly, we're looking in other directions, or whatever
mhm,
the wording is of the day. But I as a all the companies that I've worked for where I've been a hiring manager, I always tried to, if I were considering somebody for it, was looking through that, always try to reach out directly and let them know either way. If right away we knew, hey, they're not a fit, and if they respond and ask, well, why? It's like, look, you didn't have these critical qualifications, these
mhm,
pieces,
mhm.
and let them know so that at least they know. And you don't get that through the automated tools ever.
Right. You're exactly right, and I have found that that's one of the positives also for using a legal recruiter or a recruiter in the interview process or in the job application process, because there are a lot of things that maybe could contribute to maybe one of the reasons why you didn't get to be in the top 10% of your class. Maybe you're in the top 11 or top 12. For instance, I'm working with this one candidate right now, and he has fantastic experience in this transactional practice area where my client is really looking for, struggling to find somebody. And he's got great experience, but his GPA is just a little off. But the reason why is because he was deployed his first year in law school
Oh. Oh,
and
wow.
to
Okay.
Iraq, and he had to take his exams, his first year exams, he had to take them in March versus May, which was early. He didn't even get to finish the courses because he had to go to Iraq and he was deployed. So there was a reason why he didn't do so well in law school, but you can't tell that from just sending your resume. So it's just having that person. You're right, having that personal connection, having somebody who can say, "Hey, listen, I know this person, or I have talked to this person, and you really need to talk to them because of this and this and that." So AI
Well,
really does take that piece out of it.
yeah, it's I think there's a, maybe we're just kind of jumping ahead for some of the other questions I want to ask you, but again, working in IT, I want to jump right to solutions. But one of the things that I like, a difference that I see is when you have an so it's fine to have an automated process to go in and look for the keywords, to look for the core requirements that the company's decided that, hey, these minimum standards, because the quality of candidate goes way up when they meet these baseline, like, I get all of that argument. um, but when companies ask more qualifying questions, like having more of a questionnaire versus just send me a resume, or if you make it too simple and rely entirely on AI and remove that responsibility, then you don't have that opportunity to pick up those nuanced differences.
Mhm.
When there is, like, I was always better at, I'm not good at taking tests. Like, I never was. What I My comprehension level is high. I'm great at the essay questions. I can demonstrate that I understand the concepts, the theories, I can explain it. And and usually it was like, okay, like, I did, like, you answered to these wrong. Like, I see you don't remember the dates, but you remember the concept. Like, this is the, in history, here's the war, here was what was happening with the different factions. Like, I got that. I understood it. I just don't remember the dates that they happened. Who cares about
Mhm.
the dates? I remember, like, that part of it. Well, if you have those additional questions up front, then you're going to better weed out those that are truly not qualified or ready for that or have that right experience. Maybe that's part of the answer, is that. But we'll come back to that, because I've got a couple questions to talk about, like, the balance of that. But
Sure.
so you've been in this space long enough. So 30 years, it's like my IT experience over 30 years. We've seen massive changes that have happened in this space. Um, how would you say AI is continue to transform, besides this automation we were just talking about?
Mhm.
How is it transforming the rest of the recruitment process today?
So I think with all technology, there's good parts and there's bad parts. The good parts that AI has introduced to the recruiting process are fantastic. For instance, one of the main tools that I use that I love is the ability for this AI platform to record an interview that I'm having with the candidate, and then it'll transcribe it for me so that I don't have to spend my time writing notes, which is a lot. And I feel like sometimes I miss stuff,
Mhm,
unfortunately. But I try to do my best taking notes as always. But this software is awesome because it records it, transcribes it for me in a text that I can easily, um, you know, I can take parts of it that I want and put it in our database. And then it also has a something that I can go back to. I don't have to shuffle back through my notes and where did I write that? What did I do with that? Where is that? I know he said something about this. Where is it? It's great because it is just right there. I can go back and read it. So that part is absolutely fantastic. I love it. Um, it's also it is very helpful. I remember back in the days when I was at the law firm, we got paper resumes. They came in the mail, stacks
mhm,
of resumes, 6 inches thick for me to go through, and I'd have to go through them one by one by one. So that part, I mean, even just the technology now, having them in your email, that is huge. It's a huge difference from when we first started, right? It's amazing. And then I can print out the ones that I want. Well, now it's you don't even really want to print them. You just want to put them in a folder so you can pull them back up and everything's digital. So yes, over the 30 years, my job has completely changed. Just day-to-day processes have changed, and it's been fun to keep up with. And you always want to say, what's going to come out, what are they going to come up with next? And lo and behold, there is something in my inbox that's super cool that they come up with. So there is the good parts of it, definitely, that have streamlined and helped me go through candidates faster than for my clients than I
mhm.
used to be 30 years
Is
ago. It would take me a
is it
lot more
very
time.
different? Like, you're working with being external and working with multiple clients. Do
Mhm.
some have, heavier automation? I mean, is that very
Oh
different, or
yeah.
is it?
Yes, very much so. And that's what I was saying before. I'm not quite sure exactly what, products that every client uses something different, which is
Mhm.
interesting. So not only do they have their external, let's say they put something on LinkedIn and they collect the resumes that way, but some of the clients will have a portal where I have to enter the resume separately so
Mm.
that in what it does, it'll just parse the resume. So it'll take bits and pieces and put it into whatever system that they're using for them to review it. So I think that was that your question? Is that
Yeah,
what
I
you
mean,
mean?
I don't know if there's any kind of, industry standards of different tools or, like, common platforms that you're interacting with or
I wish there was. I really
yeah.
wish there was because
Well,
every time we submit a resume, it's different. Every
that
client has
that's
something different.
that's a consistent experience across multiple industries. That's I kind of my point is I think it's like kind of the Wild West right now with all these
Mhm,
different
mhm,
tools. It's wide open and there are no real leaders out there. I think I mean other than like LinkedIn and there are some other I mean even like the job sites of 20 years ago are
mhm.
small compared to like just going through LinkedIn these
Well,
days.
and to talk about LinkedIn, so as a recruiter, and I use LinkedIn Recruiter, which is different,
Mhm.
than what companies will typically use, to post jobs. But the AI, it's just as inconsistent from the LinkedIn Recruiter perspective than it is from a job seeking perspective, or an employer posting a job and getting those resumes, because I will get, oh, this person looks like a great match for this job that you're looking for, and they don't even have a law degree. That
Yeah.
I get it. So it is not. I agree with you. It is the Wild West, and I really wish that somebody would come in here and do a good job at it. But then again, I think about it honestly, Christian. Like, is there ever going to be, and should there ever be, something AI focused that takes the place of interviewing for a job? I don't really think so. I think there's such a personal element to interviewing for a job and getting hired for a job that I hope it doesn't. I hope that it doesn't take over, because there's just too many, like I said, too many of the intangible things that go into hiring a person for your company. But
Yeah.
you can make an argument either way, I'm sure.
Well, there are certainly companies that have like their recruiting, like once you're at that stage where you're past that initial resume intake and now they're going through the interview cycle,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's having experienced um, like the Microsoft experience. I was at worked at Microsoft for several years and then the smaller companies and I worked at Hewlett Packard going way back and some other big companies, but Microsoft had a very automated process. So each person that interviewed you, they put their feedback in, it would go up. So
Hmm.
the hiring
Hmm.
manager could weigh
Hmm.
the different whether the feedback was important. If one was overwhelmingly positive, another one was negative, but they were looking at like here's why they could weigh both of those things,
Hmm.
make their overall judgment. um, Most companies aren't that automated. It's the bigger firms there, but I think most people's experience with and complaint is at the funneling of every resume down into that interview is like how do I improve that process. um,
Hmm.
I mean, is AI, are you working with any of your clients to improve that, recruitee personalization experience, to make it better for that? I mean, because if you improve that process, the argument is then you improve the quality of the resumes that you are taking in.
Hmm. So my experience is that law firms aren't really viewing it that granular, which they should be, but they're not. So I think they're viewing it from more of a time saving perspective, more of a, let's just cull down these resumes and get to the, like, like you said, the funnel, and kind of get it smaller based upon this specific criteria. So to answer your question, no, I have not been approached by any client to help them improve that candidate experience. I have offered, because I do think that there is a lot of things maybe that I don't know if they don't realize it or if it's just not something that they are that concerned about. I'm not sure, but there is a lot of room for improvement on that side,
Yeah.
100%.
Well, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier. It is that finding that balance between the technology and the human interaction. You can't remove the
Mhm,
human interaction to cut through that. But if you're I mean, again, I put it in IT terms and thinking about like your search. Search is a great example for this. If you use too a specific of a term, a phrase, then if the search parameters, if it was not listed, that specific keyword was
mhm,
not included, it's not going to find that right content. It's not going to find that right candidate. And so that's why it's important to go and understand it's even worthwhile for job seekers to go and maybe hire one of these resume writers to go and tweak and improve just to make sure, am I using the right keywords, am I writing in the way that their understanding of the way that they're scanned in, that the way the OCR programs, intake off
mhm,
of PDF, for example, however the input is, that you're not going to be automatically shot down for missing something. I mean, the other factor is you are going to be less successful having a generic resume and throwing it against multiple roles than you are to go and look at specific. And this is where I've not done this, but I've done similar things. But you can yet leverage AI as the recruitee, so the job seeker, to target the company, the specific job, the role, the job description, and
mhm,
have AI. You can have your generic resume and you can dump it's like, here's the job description, here's my resume. Make sure that, you know, please let me know, what am I missing here? What do I need to highlight? What do I need to edit and change based on this
mhm,
job
mhm.
description to make sure that this is identified?
Exactly. I mean, you can even take your experience, you know, your most recent experience or whatever you're using as your background to get another job and say, you know, rewrite this or you can put it in chat GPT, for instance, and just say, make this description match this job
Yeah,
description or make my summary match my job description and they'll do it for you. But that's very time consuming because it's going to have to be done for every single job.
right.
So it's
Well,
but yes, 100%. Yes.
Well, that's why I mean, I guess, technically, if you were looking for a very specific type of role around your experiences, again, you can go in and you can have ChatGPT, have AI go in and look at 10 different examples of job descriptions and say,
Mhm.
create a version that would work with all of these,
Mhm.
but,
Mhm. Mhm.
again, you are, the more personalized you can make the experience, the higher the likelihood of success. As low as
Mhm.
that success might be, still it's a numbers game depending on how they're
Mhm.
doing that. If you're going through the front door versus through a referral,
Mhm.
but yeah, well, it's anyway. That's a. I know we're not going to solve that problem for the world now, but
Mhm. But it is
if
a
we
problem. It
if we had
definitely
another
is.
20-30 minutes, I think we could solve
Yeah.
it. But no,
Definitely. Definitely.
yeah. But finding that balance, though, so I mean, how much time are you spending now of talking with candidates versus using the tools?
I talk to candidates, honestly. I think that's a huge part of as a recruiter, it's where I add value to my clients because I it's my job to learn about my clients and you know how what type of candidate is successful at their platform in their practice group, what are the personalities within the firm that are the decision makers or are the candidates going to be reporting to, understanding that and then taking that knowledge and speaking to candidates about their experience and asking them questions that in you can ask them questions that can help us understand if they would fit into that particular culture or not. And that's something that you have to have a conversation with the person in order to ascertain. And AI, I do think has its place. I do use them, like I said, do use AI when I'm interviewing the candidates on the phone. Of course, I'll tell them, this is going to be recorded just so that I can um, listen to you and not have to, be distracted taking notes or typing or whatever in the background. But in terms of really doing my job, AI is it's useful, but it is not the majority of what I use to do my job. I just
Do
don't think I could do it as effectively.
Yeah, I think you've kind of partially answered this next question is like, do you see any parts of this process that you feel should be left untouched by AI, that it should just be that human interaction?
Again, I think it's the culture piece that you can't put you can't have a computer figure that out. You have to have a conversation with the person in order to really get a feel for that person. Now, some recruiters might not feel the same as me. They might not be as we're a boutique. We're very small. We do things on a much more executive level, high end level, high touch
Mhm.
for our clients. So we're not a big mill of resumes. We don't get hundreds and thousands of, every week. So, if I were in that type of environment, it may be a little bit different in that AI would become a little bit more useful for me. But I do right now, the the way I am balancing it, using it to improve my processes and save myself time, but still keeping that human element in it, I think is the key balance, at least for us.
Have you I mean, we talked about the example of the person who is at, might have been at the 11th percentile. Um,
Mhm.
do you think AI is exacerbating the bias problem in hiring?
Absolutely. I do. In fact, when that was actually a real example. One of my clients,
Mhm,
um, so you can either get hired out of law school through OCI interviews, on-campus interviews
mhm.
as a lawyer, or then once you've been practicing, you can make a lateral move, which is what we really, my company works with the attorneys who are making lateral moves. So my client, which is, an AmLaw 10 law firm, huge law firm, they said to me, ended up hiring this candidate, and they said to us, we never would have interviewed this candidate on campus because it was a top 11%. And because of this, we are changing our policies for on campus interviews because now we realize this made us realize what we are missing.
Yeah,
And it's just eye opening because this gentleman was perfect for the job. He had the personality, he had everything, but it was 11% and he would have gotten cut.
yeah.
So, yes.
I've seen that with working with another company, a very, very large, private, company, working with their IT for, about a year, um, and and we looked at a number of different tools, and so we helped them with the cataloging, the capture of the information, the website, kind of all those. So on the technical side of the recruiting process, but they did
Mhm,
something similar but their HR team I thought was really good, and they said, well, here's the requirements. So they might have something like they didn't have GPA, but let's say they had a metric like the GPA and certain schools, whatever, but they had this criteria. They didn't say like all of them. They could find people that had maybe didn't even finish their degree because in IT, honestly, it doesn't matter as much the degree as if you've got the
mhm,
relevant
mhm,
experience for that. So they had all these candidates that had like an associate's or had 10, 15 years of experience, but the specific experience they were looking for. And so they looked at all of the criteria and said, all right, they're missing three of these markers, but they've got the other four solid. They're at the forefront of that, and would have the interview and then talk about that. Um, so that was something where they went in and made an adjustment to that same process. And then on the other side, working with companies that have hired. Um, I'm going to show some of my bias here, but when I was working in the San Francisco Bay Area and working with my company, I had a startup. We sold our company. I developed a really good relationship to with our attorney, who taught at UC Berkeley, their MBA program, and he would
Mm,
refer companies over to us from both Stanford and Berkeley, recently funded companies that would needed help building up their companies, and that's what I consulted for a few years doing that. And and having worked for a number of different tech companies, I saw a number of companies that hired based on pedigree and
mhm,
didn't ask a lot of the hard questions because of that pedigree, that just were throwing away money and had problems from this. Um, and they were, and to go in and convince them, it's like you can't look at that. You might have people that are really book smart and just real world stupid. And you
exactly.
cannot you cannot rely on that as a primary indicator of future success. It can be a factor, but you need to look at a number of things.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if you've run into that with clients where they look at pedigree over every other factor, and how's that working out for them?
Yeah, well, law firms are notorious for wanting to
I
hire
wa
the best of
I
the
watch
best.
Suits, I loved that show, so, I mean, they only hired from Harvard, for their JD
Yes,
program, yeah,
yes, yes. So I have some clients that will only hire from the top 10 law schools in in the top 10 ranked law
yeah.
schools and top 5% within those law schools. And that's a hard line and they will not negotiate. And they can do it because of who they are, and that's fine. Maybe that works for them, and they're so huge that, I guess personality is not as important, which is their prerogative. They can hire who they wanna hire, but that's fine, but
I mean, it feels like we're beating up on the Ivy League schools. We're not, folks.
no,
Like,
no,
there are
no, not
people
at
with good
all.
personalities at these schools.
Absolutely,
I don't know the
absolutely.
numbers. I can't vouch for.
Well, my whole thing is, there might be a reason why, a person didn't go to an Ivy League school. Maybe they got in. For instance, I had a candidate in Florida who got into the University of Florida Law School, which is a very high ranking law school, but which is in Gainesville, Florida. But she ended up going to a law school closer to her home in Orlando, which was actually a fourth tier law school. She graduated number one in her class, but she chose that path because her mother was sick and she wanted to be close to her mom. Well, that that's a big deal, and you have to think too, that takes a special kind of person to make that decision, and, like I said, she graduated number 1 in her class, she went on to get her LLM in tax at Florida, but there are reasons sometimes as to why people can't go to those schools, and they're certainly bright enough. So, that's exactly what we're talking about, I think. So there's just a human element that AI cannot pick up on, and it's either important or it's not.
I mean, do you see it? I mean, is it really like the HR process now? Is it being reshaped by AI, or is this? I mean, is this the future of talent management? That it's just going to be more and more automated, or do you think that people are recognizing? Are they like slowing this process down a bit? Like again, you go and look at the adoption curve and where things are. It feels
Mhm,
like most people that I talk to we're off of the buzz where they're realizing, hey, it's not what we were sold on what it would be. The
mm,
reality is that it's going to take time to go and get that experience that we were promised. Um, like, what do you
yeah.
see happening in the space right now?
So that's a very interesting question. And again, I can only really speak to law firms and companies that have in-house legal departments within those large companies. So what I have seen is this is probably over the past maybe 15 years. What used to happen is you would have an internal recruiter, and that recruiter, it was a no-no for anybody from an internal law firm to call or to recruit out of another law firm. It was just sort of seen as, you just don't do that, right? We don't
Right.
poach from
Yeah.
our own. That's why the legal recruiters come into the picture because that's our job, right? We help them get the people that they can't get. So what happened, I'd say maybe 10, 15 years ago is those law firms and companies decided to beef up their talent acquisition team, hire more people, and they did start doing that. They did start calling in to their competitors a little bit more. And then I think what has happened in the whole AI technology piggybacked on the back of that. So all of a sudden, we did go through a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, and we were like, oh my gosh, are we going to become obsolete?
Yeah.
Recruiters, third party recruiters. But you're exactly right. What has happened is that whole buzz has worn off. They're realizing that it might have changed the game a little bit, but it still takes a ton of time. It's just your time is spent doing different things.
Yeah.
So therefore, the recruiters, they we won't become obsolete. There's still a huge place, and there always will be a huge place for recruiters in the recruitment and hiring process.
I think that's we're seeing the same thing where I think some so in recruiting, again, my experience in IT is so many of these large companies did massive layoffs of their recruiting staff around it. They decided, well, I mean, it's true where a lot of what those lower level recruiters were doing was a lot of what could be automated. A lot of
Mhm,
the top of the funnel activity is just getting resumes in to then review them where they are, looking for the keyword, like all those things, the things that AI is really good at processing. But where I think some of the growth has started to happen again, in my perspective, looking at the IT world in recruiting, but again, on the back end, the systems is that these companies realize that no, it changed how we had those people focusing. It didn't like it was probably a mistake to get rid of as many as they did in large numbers, where
mhm,
they should have just retrained them and refocused them at then the next step, having better conversations,
mhm,
richer conversations, interactions throughout the rest of the recruiting process. It was just the front end. Uh,
mhm.
and
Yeah, you don't
again, it
know
goes
what you
back
don't
to
know until you know it.
right. It's yeah, it's like always be careful. Having worked in in IT and in like I've not been I guess I spent a couple of years in the support side of things, but having been in the technical marketing side of things, it's funny you look and when the market goes bad or when or like this example of when new automation, new technology comes in and think the company thinks, oh, we could save money here, where they go make cuts. And it's often in the wrong places where it hurts them and they have to go back and repair that and find these people, build it back up.
Mhm,
I just, companies should be careful. They should be slower to shut down those pieces and redesign until they understand how is this
mhm,
really going to improve. Where it's so much harder to find people to get them adjusted into the culture, plugged in, and start benefiting from their talents from a net new versus retooling somebody who knows the culture and is already in the system. That's always what they
right,
say about the
right.
customer too. It's so much less expensive to save a customer than it is to find a new customer.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep,
Well,
yep.
maybe from your perspective, what are for job seekers? Um,
Mhm.
what are some strategies that job seekers should be thinking about taking advantage of, being aware of, that could help them in today's hiring landscape?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Christian, when you said if you see a job, let's say on LinkedIn, that you like and you want to apply for, go through your connections, go through your even second degree connections, see if you know anybody that's connected anywhere that can help you, give you the, give you a recommendation or give you an introduction or anything that's going to give you a little bit of a leg up than just sending your resume into a portal where you don't know what's going to happen. Also, if you do get a call from a recruiter or if you do end up using a recruiter, make sure that the recruiter with the job that either they're telling you about or that you are wanting to engage them to help you with, make sure you ask them a lot of questions and make sure that you're comfortable with the recruiter's knowledge of that company because that can help you as well. We get a lot of clients that will call us because either, well, for one of two reasons. They call us because they've tried to do the search on their own and they can't.
Yeah.
So they need help doing it. And so that's wonderful. Or they just don't have time to work it and they need us to do it right away. So, we take the time to understand the cultural needs as well as the experience pedigree, if you will, so that we can really get a good understanding if you are a good fit for the role. So don't be afraid to ask the recruiters questions and make sure that they really are as knowledgeable as they say they are about the position. So you won't have the same thing. You're just sending your resume into a black hole or some portal.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's and you've mentioned culture, half a dozen times. It's something,
Mhm,
I talk a lot about in this because in my experience, I mean, culture, well, it's famously said, culture eats strategy for lunch and a bunch of other
mhm,
things, right? Like the finding a cultural fit for somebody, if they're so in IT, I always say that I want to find somebody who's really smart, that's hungry for it, like there's drive there, and that they're a cultural fit. I will take that cultural fit person over pedigree, 9 out of 10 times,
mhm, mhm.
because
Yes.
that's
Y
so important.
Yep.
Um,
You can
and
teach jobs. You can teach tasks, but you can't teach culture. It's like you can't teach manners. I'm from the South. You can't really teach manners. You either got
yeah,
them or you don't, and you're gonna get a lot further in life if you are a good culture fit or if you use good manners. You just are. It's people you wanna be around.
right.
Absolutely.
So, final question for you. So, what advice would you give to organizations that are struggling with this, recruitment process? And it, like, do you do that kind of consulting too, where you look at their overall hiring processes and their candidate intake all the way through to onboarding? That part of that. What are areas that when you work with your clients that you see that there's the greatest need, and what advice do you have for companies?
I think it's a fantastic question as well. So my advice to companies is to really hone in on what you need. I can't tell you how many times I've had companies come to me when they want me to help them fill a job, and I'll go through the job description. Well, I'll say, "Do you have a job description?" First of all, they'll say, "No." I'm like, "Okay, well, that's
Yeah,
that's the first
right,
step. Let's
yeah,
get a job
right.
description put together."
And then they go and
But
cut
then
and paste it from several others
yeah,
that they had, whatever, like, it's like,
exactly.
come on.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or for instance, also have, I'll have this, I'll get a job description and we'll submit candidates that fit the job description perfectly and fit the culture and all that. And then they'll interview for the job and the decision makers will come back and say, "Oh, well, we need the person to have A, B, and C, not D, E, and F." And we're like, "Wait a minute." So
right,
my advice is to really hone in on what your needs are and articulate them as carefully as you can in your job description and communicate those either in your job posting or to the recruiter if you're going to go that route. Because the better the clear understanding that the organization has of what they need, the easier it is going to be to fill that role. And yes, I love talking to companies about how they can improve these processes. To me, it's innate. To me, it's second nature. But that's what I do for a living. So it's
yeah,
like, that's, I love to help any companies that need help kind of honing in on those processes and how to hire faster, quicker, better. I love doing that. So absolutely, yes.
Yeah. It's well, again, what I often talk about a lot is that like this is in IT, you talk about approach and methodology for this is that one of the healthy habit is to have is to continually go back and review the process. Can we improve this? What did we see here? Let's look at the latest the data. And it would be, I imagine, no different for a recruiting process to go back and all right, let's you interview. Hopefully, I don't know if you do interviews like post. Let's say they hire these people. Let's go back. Do you then go back to the client and say why this candidate over others? What worked? What like about the process? Like what was it about that? Um, do you go back and do that kind of reflective, like a
Mhm.
post-mortem of that new hire of this candidate or certain number of hires for an organization? I guess I'm
Mm.
throwing in an
No,
additional
we
question.
don't actually, but I love that. Yeah, that's a great tool
It's funny
to
because I
offer.
just did this conference at a country around feedback loops and that
Mm,
whether you are, I would say for you, for your company, the clients as well are missing out on valuable information about that whole process and how you can improve it, how you can learn about that.
mhm,
That can help improve how they write their job descriptions, how they
mhm,
describe their culture, what the actual process looks like, both the recruitment through to the onboarding, and all those different things that you can get data out of those by just having a couple additional interviews after the
mhm.
hire has been made, and
I
continue
love that,
looking at
Christian. I
that
just
process.
wrote all that down. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. And later on, you
No,
can
that's
use
great.
AI. It says, based on this feedback that Christian provided, what are three things that I could do?
Yes, yes, yes. I'll use AI to help me come up with a business plan. Thank you very
That's right.
much. No.
There we go. Yep. And create the logo for the new side of the business, the
Exactly, exactly. No, that's a really good point though, and it's very valuable too. I don't know if companies do that enough, but I think it is invaluable to their sustainability with who they hire.
I agree. I agree. I think it is rare companies that I've come across that are that proactive in continual improvement of every system,
Mhm,
and recruiting is so important to have a
mhm,
quality experience both for the hiring manager and the candidates because that can impact. I mean, that's part of your culture, but can also impact
mhm.
the perceptions externally of the company.
Absolutely, absolutely. You say that there's been so many times where I've had candidates interview and they're like, "Oh my gosh, the process was so erratic, and I don't really want to interview with this company
Yep,
anymore. Like, please pull my name
yep.
from consideration." And
I
it's a
have
tough
seen that.
conversation to have with the client, but yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
happens.
yep. I have, earlier in my career, I withdrew from a company because it was that chaotic, where they rewrote the job description a couple times, made adjustments. So, like, what's going on? Well, then I guess I'm not a
Mhm.
fit. It's like, no, 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 you still like. Well, this makes. Anyway, yeah, dredge up old pains from that
Yeah,
experience, but.
yes, yes,
Well,
yes.
Jody, really appreciate your time today. Again, this is something that this is an important topic for most organizations. Like anybody that is
Mhm,
hiring people, it needs to be thinking about this. Is leveraging some versions of the new tools, the technology that are AI infused somewhere. It's important to not lose sight of what are you actually trying to do. What's the value that these tools are actually providing versus getting in our way of finding the right people.
yes,
Well,
I
thanks for your
agree.
time, Jody, and we need to definitely stay in touch. I know that I occasionally run into people that are in this space again on the tech side, but work with the on the legal side of things. So
Mm.
always happy to help. And of course, anybody that's watching, I'll have all of Jody's contact information, her company's information as well on the blog post and out on YouTube. So definitely be watching for those.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Christian. This has been great.
You've been listening to the CollabTalk podcast. New episodes are published weekly, and you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and most other podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.